What's up, fellas?
What's going
What's
on?
up, man?
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We'll see. A few people are going to start trickling in here. We got ourselves another live going. We haven't done one of these in a couple weeks. I know I was out of town. I think Dan was out of town. I don't know if you were out of town, but everyone seemed like they were out of town last week. But we're going to get this going again. Welcome if you guys are watching on YouTube or if you're watching on X. I would recommend jumping over to YouTube if you want to be hopping in on the chats and everything. Or if you're listening on Spotify, welcome. I'll be posting that tomorrow, but welcome still. For those listeners, definitely hop over on YouTube for the lives. It's definitely I think a better experience as a whole. But yeah, how are you guys doing today?
Pretty good. Could be a little bit better if we were actually able to pull out that win, but not too bad.
Echoing off Ricky, that was echoing off Ricky.
Yeah, I feel it. It's kind of brutal, but it stinks. You lose 4-6 to the Dodgers. You lose 3 of 4 to the Dodgers, which that alone just sucks. Couple that with you dropping 2 of 3 to Colorado, and everyone knew coming out of the break, like if they wanted, even though I think all of us have kind of mentioned in the past that we kind of err on the side of selling at least some of the players off this season. You knew, I think minimum they needed to go 7-4 coming out in these first 11 games before the trade deadline, and they already can't do that. Like, they're gonna have to sweep just to have a winning record in that span. They're gonna have to sweep Colorado, and the fact that there's still people out there going, well, let's just see what they do versus Colorado. It's like, guys, we're 6 games now under 500. Like, it's time. Just bite the bullet.
Yeah. It is time. Unfortunately, we got to this position. It's been 6 years, and there's been some improvement to the farm, but at the major league level, the product has been, something that has been very unsatisfactory for a lot of fans, including myself. And I know you both probably feel a little bit of the same way. So it's a little disappointing, especially with some of the potential signings we had with Jung Ho and Snell. It's bitter. It's a little bittersweet, to be honest, but a lot more bitter than anything sweet. So
yeah, I think for all of us, it's pretty clear that it's time to at least sell off some pieces. Now, I do feel like they're in a little bit of a weird spot with some of these contracts they have and all these opt-outs. Like Ray, for example, he looked really good, but you're not going to have enough showcasing for him to be really thrown out in a trade. His contract's a little weird. Snell, obviously, he hasn't really turned it on until recently. Now, I think he might be a guy you could still see shipped out, possibly. I do feel like the Giants will probably hold off on that just based on past history under this regime. And then you got a couple other guys like Chapman. He has a similar type contract as well. Could be back. He hasn't had the greatest season unless he catches fire again late in the season. He'll probably be back in. Conforto, he's probably gone. A couple of these guys are guys you could be looking at getting traded, but ultimately I think it's kind of a weird spot they're in right now. Still not too far away from 500, but you also have multiple teams you still have to pass up. So should be an interesting deadline. And I'm just kind of at the point where I'm like, just do something. If they're at the point of being desperate and wanting to buy, just buy something at this point, or sell off multiple pieces. Just don't stand pat and sit in the middle like they have the last few years. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's the worst thing they could do. It's just to sit on their hands. Like
100%.
Like you said, even if they go buy, like if you want to, and don't get rentals. Obviously, if you're going to go buy, go get guys that are going to be under contract at least for 2025, preferably more. But if they're at least under contract for 2025, because it's pretty well documented on my show that I do. I'm more confident in them for 2025 than I think a lot of people are. I do think the roster can compete next season the way that you'll potentially have a full season of guys like Snell and Ray and, Tristan Beck, who I've said is super underrated, what they lost to him. That's kind of a glue guy in full seasons of some of these young players that look like they can be pretty solid players. Guys like Birdsong, Harrison hopefully takes another step. Bailey, hopefully his bat keeps improving and he figures out how to block something in the dirt. Um, guys like maybe Lee takes a little bit of a step forward. Ramos keeps doing what he's doing. There's opportunity, and that doesn't even factor in what they can get in the offseason, if they make trades or sign somebody or, any of that stuff. But it feels like for this season, like it just, to me, it's like just turn your focus to 2025. You can still try and, figure out what you have with some of these young guys. Like you're not going to just punt 2024 and not care about it, but like figure out what you have with these guys, because the vets, it's just not working. It's pretty clear. Like the team, it's flawed. I think that's just the best way I can put it. It's just they have talent. It's just flawed the way it's constructed.
Yeah.
So 100%. No, 100%. I mean, you got Luciano sitting there crushing baseballs in the PCL. He's got some defensive kinks, but so does Wisely. I mean, so does Fitzgerald. And at the end of the day, that's what you're going to have with the young shortstop. I mean, not everyone's Brandon Crawford, a defensive whiz coming up in 2011. Like, that's just the reality. I mean, we talk about guys like Ozzie Smith as these great defensive wizards. Literally, his nickname is, I think the Oz, or, as a homage to the Wizard of Oz. And it takes time to develop some of these guys. I mean, Ramos took how long? I mean, his situation's a lot different. But, I mean, I'm with you. Let him play. What do we have to lose at this point? And if if Luciano starts going off, I mean, that sounds like a win-win situation for everyone, fans, organization, and he's happy. I don't see how that's a lose situation anyway. And if he doesn't perform too well, package him in a deal and go get someone with some control that you could build around. It's not someone like a Lamont Wade where, the best ability is availability, but package him with someone that, you can go get that can play every day, that doesn't have a history of injury.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm kind of at the point where it's not only we have guys this year that can opt out after this season ends, we also have guys that are entering the final years of their contract next year. I believe Wilmer, Wade, multiple guys. And it's kind of at the point where these are all guys in their early 30s. There's not really much future here. They're not star talents. They were never star talents. It's like, let's open up some room for guys like Matos, where it's, you don't have Yaz sitting over your shoulder and you're only getting at bats, once every 5 days. It's like, just run it out there and see what happens. Let him get consistent at bats so he's not constantly wondering when his, next start's going to be, and just let him run it out there, because at the end of the day, you can't even get to 500 at all this season. So I don't really see the upside in, starting a guy like Yaz every single day, damn near. So it's kind of, we're at the point where they're not going to catch 6-7 teams unless they go on a historic run pretty much. And you kind of just want to see them give some guys opportunities, see what you have going into next year. Like Cody is saying, doesn't mean you need to throw away this season, but it's see what you have next year, because, you could open up some spots in the offseason as well. And you can still go in and add in the offseason. This doesn't mean it's some full rebuild. It's just clear some spots for some of these guys. You have a lot of guys knocking on the door in Sacramento. And like Josh said, Ramos was not some finished product in Sacramento just waiting in the wings. He didn't turn it on until really the last month and a half of last season in Sacramento. And you have two guys in Sacramento, in Matos and Luciano, who have been far better players all throughout the minors than Ramos has, if we're being honest. So we're not at a point of giving up on those guys either, both 22 years old. So I would definitely like to see those guys get more run up here.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys I want to see get some run, honestly. Like, I think at the bare minimum, I'd like to see, Luciano get a look, Schmidt get a look. Now they have VR up here. Wilmer got It kind of feels like, I don't think it's quite a phantom IL, but it does feel kind of like because allegedly his knee has a tear in it or whatever, which then brings me to why the hell is he been playing this whole time? Because he's been horrible. And VR was playing well down in SAC, but that's neither here nor there. I'd like to see VR get his look. Matos. It's just there's a whole bunch of guys that I think they should be playing right now. And Encarnacion, bring him up. Let him hit a little bit. Like there's so many guys right now down there that it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, does everybody want to watch a team full of rookies play? Some probably won't take a lot of interest in that, but there's a lot of Giants fans I would enjoy that. I know I'd feel like that roster at least has some excitement because some of those guys can steal some bags. They got some pop. It's just athletically, it would be a better, athletic team or a more athletic team. They may, they're going to go through their struggles, but it kind of is what it is. Hopefully one or two of those guys shows enough of something that you feel like next season, maybe Casey Schmidt looks good and you're like, sweet, see ya, Chapman. Like, we're going to pay a guy $800,000 to do 90% of what you produce. Like, it's things like that where it's just about making or better positioning yourself for next season to go on a run next season when you're going to have hopefully a full stock of pitching and everything going into the season where you could compete. So.
No, Ray going 5 hitless in his first start coming back. The inconsistency with his release point, that's something that's going to happen when you have that adrenaline running through your veins and it's your first start back in 16 months. But you can get 6-7 consistently from him. You get Snell going 6-7 consistently. Webby, if we don't move on from him and he figures it out, we get 6-7, 8-9 from him. You're talking arguably the best 1-2-3 rotation in baseball. We're not talking the National League. We're not talking the NLS. We're talking the entirety of Major League Baseball. And that's something the Giants ran out for, 3 of our 3 rings. You had Timmy Kane and Lindsay, Timmy Kane and Bum run out there. And look what happened there. So they have the talent, but as you both said, it's just such a weird position because it's not a full on rebuild. You have guys on, one opt-outs. You have guys on leaving who could potentially leave after next year. It's just such a limbo, but that's Farhan. That's the culture he's created. And that's unfortunately what we're kind of dealing with as fans, is having to deal with this familiarity or having to become familiar with new players like a Wade or a Wisely or a Conforto, Manaya.
So.
Yeah, and as Daniel's mentioning below, assuming they don't opt out between Ray, which probably won't, but, Snell too, assuming you do have those 3 at the front of the rotation next year on top of potentially Harrison, Birdsong, and possibly even Wisenhunt as well, amongst others, they still got to figure out what they're going to do with Hicks going into next year, if they're going to actually be able to build him up for the long haul, or if he's going to be either a multi-inning reliever, or if you trade Oval, you could be looking at going back to a late inning rule if he's open to that. That's where it's kind of tough, the spot the Giants are in, because there is talent on this roster. It's just finding ways to manage it properly. And, like Cody and I have been saying for a while now, you can totally do a buy and sell trade deadline and be very productive and kind of just retool up for next year, have a really deep rotation, and then, just go and open up a couple spots. But then you can also trade out of that surplus of young pitching and go and get yourself a bat. It's time to be aggressive. It's time to make that big splash move, even if it doesn't mean we get into the playoffs this year. It's, think about next year in the long haul and trying to make this a legit contending team, not some team that needs everything to go right just to win 85. So,
yeah. No, I agree. Hey, how do you guys think the opt-outs play out? Because I know, like, personally, I think Ray, there's like less than a 1% chance of him honestly opting out. I think the only way he could opt out is going to be because I mean, just doing the math, he's going to get what 10 to 12 starts, and I mean, he's going to have to be really good in those. And I don't think that's enough for him to get more than 2 for 50 mil, which is what he's owed after this season. And I mean, I could see the argument to try and, chase a 3 or 4 year deal, but even taking 4 years for like less, because it'd probably be significantly less average. So it's like, even if you do that, I mean, to me, I think it's worth it for him because he's historically been pretty durable and healthy, other than the Tommy John. So it's like, to me, take your 2 years, and then especially pitching in Oracle Park for 2 years, you could have a lot of success. And then as the league has shown, they're happy to give even mid-30s pitchers 2-3 year deals and pretty decent, average annual values. So I think his opt-out opportunity is like very slim. Snell, obviously, it's going to depend a lot on how the rest of the season goes. If he throws like he has the last 3 starts the rest of the way, even with the horrible beginning to the season, I feel like he'll opt out because he'll probably feel pretty confident that he'll get at least the money he got, and even if it's another pillow contract or whatever you want to call it. But I could see him pursuing that. And Chapman, my gut kind of tells me he's going to still opt out. Like, he's got about 14 home runs right now and 46, 45 RBIs. Now, don't look at his average with runners in scoring position, but, he still has about 45 RBIs. He's still going to be probably a Gold Glove finalist at third base, even though he's not been, I feel like, as good as I've seen in the past. But my gut is like he's having a good enough season that he thinks he can at least even duplicate the contract he got, which basically gives him an extra year of security. So I feel like he'll opt out, but that's just me.
Yeah, if he does opt out, I mean, he's definitely the likeliest, I think, of all of them to actually return. I don't know why. I guess it's just Farhan's history with free agent pitchers that have left here. I don't see Snell returning if he does opt out, which, like you said, probably a pretty good chance with the rate he's going these last few starts. And then, like I said, Conforto's a free agent. I don't know. I mean, I honestly see a lot of these guys leaving, and even if Chapman does opt out, I don't see him getting some massive contract for anything more than 2-3 years. Might just get a higher annual value, but ultimately, I think he returns. I think he likes it here, being in California, being back on the West Coast, and it seems like they kind of like his leadership, whether his hitting's been consistent or not. I think he's somebody they'd like to have around. And as much as I like, how Schmidt's done in sack this year, I don't know that they're so ready to just hand him a starting job with no competition either.
Yeah.
I think Chapman's the likeliest to stay out of all of them. I think Ray stays too. A gut feeling tells me if Snell continues this pace, he's gone. I mean, that's easy. How are we going to replace that type of quality starts potentially next season when he's at his truest form is within the organization. It's going to be very, very tough. The only way I see Ray opting out is if he goes on this historic run of just the next 10, 12 starts of just sub-2 ERA, 120 strikeouts, less than 40 walks. I mean, his ERA sub-2, mainly because he has security here with, 2 years. Was it 2 years? 2 years of control after this?
Yeah, 2 for 50 mil.
Yeah, I mean, that's coming off Tommy John. Nothing's guaranteed in free agencies, but especially after what we saw with this offseason. To me, it's going to have to be replacing Snell's productivity when he's at his best next season. That's going to be the biggest challenge for the Giants. And under Farhan's leadership, I mean, we lost Rodon, we lost Gosman. I don't see that replacement happening. But that is to say, if Farhan returns, which I think we can all say that I will gladly pay for a one-way ticket out of here for him, and I think many fans can agree. And the Johnsons, I'll pay for their one-way tickets out of here too, bro. See ya. Thank you for your time. Not really. Have a great day.
Send them all to Cancun.
Yeah. We'll see you there.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing I'll say about the Johnsons and all this is like, and I mean, even a guy like Farhan is it can change quick. Like as much as I'm gonna say here, and I think all of us kind of feel like they deserve to get the boot. And I mean, you're not, as Jed York once said, and this is the analogy I'm going to use. Jed York once said, like, you don't fire the owners. And the reality is Johnson's not going anywhere. They make too much money off this franchise. So like, we're kind of stuck with him. But, York was a guy that every Niner fan hated. They all wanted him gone. And sometimes it's just the luck, if you get rid of Farhan and you just happen to get, a Mark Elias type that all of a sudden just turns everything around, builds up the farm, puts a great product on the field, and then you look like, okay, we're going to be really good for a long time. Opinions change quick. It's like, so now am I betting on that happening? No, not really. I mean, unfortunately, the odds are against that, but there is some hope if they make the move. I feel like Farhan has shown his hand too much where he's too scared to make the big moves. He's too scared to do anything bold. He's too scared to put himself at risk and put himself out there in any way that, you have to be one of those guys. So that's just from what I've seen. He won't make a big trade. He won't commit more than a couple of years to like any free agents up until Jung-Hoo Lee, which is kind of an outlier because he was 25 years old. So it's a little different. That's just what I've seen. I'm pretty sure I've heard both of you. I think you're both kind of in the same boat, but I'll let you guys kind of add on to that if you want. So,
yeah, going back real quick on the Snell situation, part of the reason why I'm kind of on board with just trying to find a trade partner for him is not that I don't want him here, because I love having him at the front of the rotation and the potential there with Webb. But I look at that trade he pulled off with Pomeranz, who had almost no value a few years back, and he got a little bit of a hot stretch out of the pen. And literally right on deadline day, I believe it was, he shipped him out to the Brewers, and I believe that was where they got Mauricio Dubon in return. And he was a pretty solid prospect at the time in their system, and their system was not bad at that time of that trade. So I look at a trade like that with a guy who has a way better track record in Snell. And I'm like, I don't know why you wouldn't try to ship him out, especially if you're not going to get anything for him, and you won't get a draft pick back for him at the end of the year either, if I'm not mistaken. So I look at that past history, and then I look at today's AJ Puck trade with the D-backs, and they went and shipped out their number 14 and number 30 prospects for a guy who is an injury-prone reliever converted over from a starter. His numbers aren't even that amazing this year. He's got a 4.30 ERA. I'm like, if they can get that in return for a guy like him, just imagine what they could get for, giving up 2-3 months of Snell, and they can still go and try to re-sign him in free agency. So why not? This season's kind of a lost cause other than, aiming for development of some of the young guys. So I personally would go in that direction.
Yeah.
Snell to Baltimore. I wonder what Baltimore would pay to line up a righty-lefty combo. Corbin Burns and Blake Snell going into October. Oh, my God. And when was the last time Baltimore even sniffed the World Series? Imagine the potential haul Farhan could get that could potentially save his job if he's able to ship him out to a contender like that. And then you get Grayson Rodriguez throwing the ball well, and you have Blake Snell. I mean, Blake Snell was the last time he was in the playoffs. Was it 2022 with the Padres, and then 2020 with the Rays, and what he did in the Mickey Mouse World Series? I mean, you have Blake Snell and Corbin Burns as your 1-2 punch going into October, and you're desperate for a World Series with that lineup, and you're that desperate. I can't imagine what. I mean, and Baltimore is a historic organization, but it's nothing like the Giants or Yankees. No. When was the last time we even heard Baltimore in a World Series conversation? 2012, 2014, even then.
Yeah, they went to the ALCS, I think, in
got
14?
swept by the
The
Royals.
Yeah.
And if we didn't have Madison Bumgarner, we probably would have got swept too, if I'm being completely honest. The Royals were that 2014, 2015 Royals teams were two of the greatest teams I've ever seen in my lifetime, to be honest. But I mean, that potential right there, I mean, there's some value there. I didn't think of it to an extent that way, but if Snell continues this rate, regardless of his win-loss record, I wouldn't mind shipping him off and getting something from Baltimore. Someone with a really big farm system that has some MLB ready now talent that actually would have some not delayed gratification, but now where fans are like, I see you.
Yeah.
Ricky, make a point.
Yeah, I mean, and to kind of expand on what Ricky said, the trade that Arizona made, sending De Los Santos, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
De Los
Sending
Santos.
him over, you look at him and he was their 14th ranked prospect and he has like 28 home runs in AAA right now. I mean, yeah, they play in Reno, but I mean, he still has like 28 homers in AAA. He's 21 years old, plays first and third base. I mean, I've said for a while you could trade a guy like Tyler Rogers or Mike Conforto or Tyro Estrada and those guys. And when people have asked, like, what do you think you get for him? And I'm like, probably a guy somewhere in a team's like 12 to 16 range. I don't know, somewhere in that range for a prospect. And everyone goes like, oh, well, that's just not a good prospect. Like, why are we going to trade it for just some bum? And it's like, that's the kind of guy you might get. And that guy might be good. He might not be. I mean, you might just end up trading him and getting cap relief and a roster spot and the ability to play a young guy more, which also has its own value. But it's like, you never know with a guy like that. If that's the guy you're getting back, I mean, he could be a really intriguing piece. You might get a guy that's lower in the rankings because he's injured. I mean, you look at the Giants system and you see a guy like Jairo Pomares, who's only 23 years old and he's hitting the cover off the ball in Double-A right now. And the only reason he's ranked as low as he is because he missed the entire last season due to injury. So it's hard to just look at the rankings and just think, we got some crappy prospect back for this guy. But you could collect a few of these guys and hopefully one or two end up being, decent players down the road. And then you also give the young guys an opportunity. And then, as you guys both pointed out, you could trade a guy like Snell and probably get a really good prospect, not just someone in that range. You could trade a guy like Chapman and probably get a really good prospect out of it. If the Yankees wanted him or someone like that, that's the one team I've kind of heard linked. There's a few pieces. I mean, you could try and make a trade for Webb, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I want to hear what the chat says here because I'm going to kind of throw something out there with Webb. I know yesterday on, I think it was the NorCal show, Dan kind of floated this one with Webb and Doval going to Baltimore. And it was basically, I want to say it was like Kobe Mayo, Kierstad, Norby, and there was one other guy in there. I don't remember who the fourth was.
Kobe
but
Mayo?
he kind of, Kobe Mayo coming back. And so my thoughts on if you trade a Webb, and I'm not against it. I'm not 100% for it because for me, it just fully comes down to what you're going to get back. Because I mean, just in reality, Giants fans aren't going to accept just any package back for Logan Webb. Like he is the face right now. He is a homegrown guy. Everyone's going to attach themselves to that player more. He's been their best player for a few years. Like you can't, it's hard to make those trades. But to me, if you're going to make that deal, you need to get at least two like top 25, 50, whatever prospects back that are both kind of major league ready that you can almost insert from day one where Giants fans can go, oh, look, these are the guys we got back from Webb from day one. They're not just listening to, us talk about them down in Sacramento or something, or in Eugene or something like that. So I think it takes a very specific type of package to trade a guy like Webb. And that for me to want to do that. And I mean, that's one I absolutely would do. That's why I kind of constantly come back to Baltimore because they're a team that can put that package together. So I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts if you would be wanting to move him or just kind of not, or wanting to hold him, or, kind of it depends, I guess would be the best way to put it.
I would definitely try to get rid of Snell first in a package with Doval just because of the contract situation. Now, of course, you're not going to get as much for Snell because of that contract. Like Frederick's saying, Webb's contract is super team friendly, and you're going to have him under team control for a while. So, I mean, if you're sending Webb and Duvall out together to Baltimore, I'm asking for 3 of their top 10 guys, plain and simple, because both those guys are under team control, and neither of them are making a ton of money for given their talent. Now, if it's Snell and Doval, I'm still probably asking for 2 top 10 guys. Like I might ask for, either a Norby or a Mayo, and then throw in another one of their outfielders or infielders into that trade as well from their top 10. Because there's a couple of guys in their system that aren't quite as high end of talents that are still in their top 10 as much as like the Jerstads and the Mayo and those guys. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'd ask for probably 2 with Webb or Snell and Doval, and then I'd probably ask for 3 to 4 of those guys with Webb and Doval, just because of the contracts.
How would you feel about Jackson Holiday coming over to San Francisco?
I'd probably. I mean, I'm gonna ask for it. I don't know if they'll be willing to give it up, but I'll ask for it.
So then I'll counter with Webby, Duvall, and Luciano, with Jackson Holiday and 2 other top 10 prospects, and we call it a day. Because at this point, if Luciano can hit and he's hitting, he doesn't got to play short. You got Gunnar Henderson. You can move him to the outfield. You can move him to first base. You can play him at second. You can play him at third. There's other options for him in an area where he doesn't have to technically compete for a job. He just has to play. His bat just has to play, not his glove. And if we can get someone like a Jackson Holiday included with those 3, and he could be major league ready in a year, that's a big name that a lot of Giants fans can rally around, because that's not like a superstar we're signing. That's a superstar that we're homegrowning. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like what Atlanta did with Dansby Swanson. Homegrown. But yeah, he came from Arizona before he was your homegrown. So I'm down for that. I mean, whatever we can get back, I'm cool with moving Webby and Duvall on the condition we get King's ransom and talent that is either going to compete now or is going to be on the opening day roster next year. Because at this point, that's just what we're. If you're going to ship our better players and some of the more well-known, nationally known names, I want a King's ransom back, like you both were saying.
I think you have to at least have. I mean, it's kind of an illusion when it's prospects, because you just don't know until they play for you. You're not gonna. If you're the Giants, you're not gonna know if you won the trade for realistically 3 or probably 2 or 3 years at least. But you need to at least have the illusion that you won the trade. Like you need to look at the haul you got back and then be plugging these guys in either day 1 or, like you said, opening day next year. And you have to feel like, it sucks. We're trading Webb. Like it's brutal. Hopefully he wins a World Series in Baltimore this year, but like our lineups can be transformed in 2025. And the reason I'm so open to moving a guy like Logan Webb, as much as he's one of my favorite players, it's hard not to root for a guy like Logan Webb with how much he just genuinely cares. But you should have no issue getting pitching in Oracle Park, like whether it's drafting and developing it, whether it's signing it, whatever it is, it should not be that hard to get pitching in this park. We've all seen how hard it is to build up a potent lineup forever. So that's kind of where I'm very open to that.
The best lineup of my lifetime is probably 2001 to 2003. So that tells you how long it's been. And I was 6, 7, and 8 years old. The best teams that I grew up watching did not win the World Series, talent-wise. Yeah. So I'm with you on if we can get this talent now. And it sucks because Logan was one of those. He's not a Bay Area kid, but he's a NorCal kid. He's from Rockland. Yeah. So that's someone that, as a Giants fan, a Bay Area Giants fan, that's someone that's hard to let go. Extremely, because he is passionate. Yeah. He is the vocal leader of this team. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, it is a business. And this organization, for its historical impact on the game, deserves better from what this front office has currently given us. And if it means moving on from Webb to get that King's ransom back to potentially get us back, I'm cool with it. It's comparatively like a Trey Mancini Orioles situation. Trey was through it all, and then when they started getting good, they moved on from him. So it's bittersweet. It is, but it's also a business, unfortunately, and that's the worst part of this game at the major league level.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah,
I mean, and we'll kind of we may circle back a little bit on the trade talk, but what do you? Because I know there's a little more I want to go into, but what Logan Webb. I mean, I think he said it so eloquently. Or he said he's thrown the ball like shit his last three starts. But I mean, what do you guys kind of make of his struggles and what you're seeing?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, Frederick's saying, why did he stop throwing his one elite pitch? So you've got that to factor in. And then also you look at his inning totals from the last, honestly, 3 years, if you include this season, and you pair that with the major struggles from the rest of the rotation and how much is put on his shoulders to carry the load. I saw a stat, I believe, earlier today, and they're 29th in innings pitched out of the rotation. It's just every single year. And this is why it drives me crazy when I hear Farhan go on to KNBR and do his little mole chuckle that he does and laugh over openers and how amazing he thinks they are. And it's like, you're totally missing the bigger picture here, dude. Like, you think it works because you win a game here and there and you steal a game in a series, and it's like, that's cool, but that doesn't mean anything in April and May. It means something once you get post All-Star break and your pen is just worn out and you're losing these 6-4 games against the Dodgers because your pen has, one, no wiggle room because your offense isn't scoring, and two, they're just worn out. You have the Roger brothers that are up there in innings pitched every single year, especially as Giants. And then you throw in Doval when they actually do win games. He's having to go every day. And then you got Walker, who throws, it feels like every other day or sometimes 3 days in a row. So I just kind of wonder if, the innings are kind of getting to him, I'm not sure, but it is a concern when it's just him and nobody else behind him every single year under this regime.
I'm with Ricky on that. I think it's that. I think it's the consistent limbo that this organization is in. The fact that, I mean, Matt Cain threw 200 something innings for consistent, for 3, 4, 5 years straight. But how many times did they win rings? How many times did they know he had Tim Lincecum and Madison Bumgarner in front behind him? Webb's got to go out every fifth day knowing he has to go 2 runs or less, 7, 8, 9. And after a while, mentally speaking, even for a major league professional athlete, that stuff wears on you. That stuff wears on you. No, because you're no longer just having to pitch. You're thinking in the back of your mind, you have to save your teammates. You're thinking in the back of your mind, I have to be perfect for my offense to give me 3 flipping runs. And after so many years, it really does take a mental and physical toll, because those aren't just pitches. Those are stressful pitches. And there's a difference between throwing 65 easy pitches for 5 innings and throwing 65 pitches through 5 innings where you have runners on all the time and you have to try to wiggle yourself out of it to save other arms, because Hicks can't go deep. Snell hasn't been able to go deep. Harrison hasn't been able to go deep. Birdsong is a rookie, so you don't expect him to go deep. Ray's going to go 5 or 6 for the next full time. This is the recipe of disaster, because you don't have consistent starting pitching, and then the pitch sequencing is awful. Brian Price, dog. There's sometimes I'm like, I see you. And other times where I'm watching the game and I'm like, why are you throwing that there? Why are you throwing that there? Why are you speeding up his hands? Like, it doesn't help Webby or Hicks, guys who have movement and have to pitch ahead of the count to be successful, when you're constantly using sequences that don't benefit them. And I know I'm talking a lot, but when you're
Yeah,
going
good.
against sequences that aren't uncomfortable and you're going against your strengths, you're going to drive up your pitch counts. And you're not going to, and when you're constantly going, fuck, I got to throw this with conviction, you're not going to throw that pitch with, I'm sorry, I swore, sorry.
Oh, you're good, man.
Flip,
I don't care.
Okay. Flip, when I have to throw this pitch with conviction that you don't believe in, those are pitches that generally you'll leave hanging or throw for a ball because you're scared or fearful that that's not a pitch you can put where you want when you want it, if that makes sense. So Webby to me is all mental. I don't think it's as much physical. I think it's just everything around him is finally catching up to a guy like him. Like Matt Cain.
Yeah.
If he didn't get help from Lincecum and Bum, I don't think we'd be ever talking about Matt Cain the way we do.
Yeah.
Going on the pitch sequencing topic, I do kind of wonder how much is also on Bailey, because they do trust him to call his own pitches. And I don't know if you remember, Cody, but I kind of brought this up early in the year with not only Doval, but a couple other guys where, like, even Snell early on. And yeah, his command wasn't great, but it just felt like they're constantly pitching around guys. And we've seen it with Doval all year. It's like super slider heavy, and it's like the guy can throw 102 miles an hour. Like, just locate the fastball.
He can get away with a middle fastball every now and then. Why are we pitching 5 inches off the plate all day? Like,
thank you.
You don't need to paint it.
Thank you. Yes. So I didn't want to bring this up, but my uncle works near the ballpark, and Duval comes in with his family consistently to shop for groceries at his store. And so he talks ball with Duval quite a bit, but he doesn't feel like they have a good enough relationship where he can just tell him, don't listen to Price, throw 102 down their throats, and dare them to touch your God-given missile of an arm. Yeah. I completely agree. Sometimes simple is better. And thank you for the slight slander on Bailey. Those are the things that I've echoed on social media where I think Bailey lacks, and I understand it's different coming from Buster Posey to Patrick Bailey. But if you can't call a game as a major league catcher and block a ball in the dirt, you might be a DH or a first baseman. Sorry, not sorry. That's just me. I understand he can steal strikes, but if you got to see who was popping is Austin Barnes. If you saw Austin Barnes today, pop a squat, show the glove, and how many times did his pitchers miss? All I got to say. How many times do you see our youngins miss because Bailey doesn't show his glove and pulls up? I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean, I do think Bailey is overall he's a good defensive catcher. Like he's good. I'm not willing to go to the elite route. I know it's pissed off a lot of people, but I'm not willing to go the elite route when he has a clear deficiency in his game. I'll defend him slightly on some of the pitch sequencing just because, especially like Frederick brought up Randy throwing 5 straight fastballs, which it was like, dude, what are we doing? Like, it's a good fastball hitter, and all you did is give him heat, and he knew they were coming. Like, come on, man. Throw a slider in the dirt, even if it's just to show him a different speed. And you know what, Buster, as much as I praise the guy all the time, you know, that Cody Bellinger at bat in 21, and they throw Duvall through like it felt like 15 straight sliders, and it was like, dude, one fastball up in the zone, just one, just to change the speed, and they didn't call it. So
I agree. The one thing I will say,
they all do it, unfortunately.
No, I'm with you because I remember that bat like it was consistent. The one scapegoat I will give to Posey, because I also give Posey a lot of I give him his heat for it, is he couldn't locate that sinker in on Bellinger's hands, because that was the pitch Belly struggled with all series and all season long, especially from our guys like Duvall. I agree with you. That slider to Belly, that doesn't happen. We go to extras. So I'm with you. Yeah. Even the greatest do it too. I'm with you. I agree.
Yeah. So, and yeah, Frederick, like, you know, here's the thing. It depends on what you value. You know, based on the algorithms they write, sure, he's the most valuable defensive catcher or defensive player in baseball. It just, my opinion, you cannot be truly atrocious blocking balls and be considered an elite catcher. I don't personally think there is an elite catcher in baseball right now, because too many of them have deficiencies in their games, whether it's blocking balls, whether it's throwing, handling the running game, whether it's their framing, whatever, whatever the case may be. Like every single catcher has some kind of deficiency. That now Bailey might be one of the best of the group. Like that's probably accurate. But to me, there aren't any truly elite catchers. You go watch what guys like Posey, Molina, both Molinas, I should say, Matheny, Pudge. You watch all these guys, it's night and day. Like they make these guys look like little leaguers. Like that's the reality. So
I mean, yep. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm a big '90s fans of baseball, and if you look at the '90s Braves, Javi Lopez, their catcher, wasn't really well known. Perfect. I agree with you, Cody. There is no elite catcher. The last elite catcher retired when Yadi Molina retired. I don't think JT Realmuto is elite. I don't think Bailey's elite. And it's not because they don't have the talent. It's the style of coaching that has limited their ability to do a catcher's job. A lot of their guys are taught one knee now and bring up the glove. And they're also teaching when you're throwing down to second to come around the plate rather than going through the plate. And when you come around the plate, that's an extra step and a half you're giving major league runners to steal second. Yeah. A foot and a half. How many times have you seen Bailey or Casali or whoever's behind the plate just miss a throw by a foot and a half? Yeah. Because they're coming around the plate, not through, and that's part of the one knee blocking. And I'm with you. I don't believe there's a truly elite catcher, but there are very talented catchers that can be elite. It's just coaching prevents them, not them. Coaching and development.
And I'm going to add one last thing, and then I'll turn it over to Ricky. Because Frederick, is your comment, the reason they can't block is because smart orgs realize it's better to let balls go by and steal strikes than the opposite. Shouldn't this be determined based on situations?
Yes.
Yeah. If you want to have a one knee down with, nobody on, by all means, go for it. If you want to have one knee down when you're up 5 runs in the 7th inning, go for it. Regardless of guys. Well, if there's a guy on third base, you better have both knees up. Like that's my opinion. I absolutely never on third base. That both knees need to be up. That's me. I personally also don't like even if there's a runner on first, if he represents the tying run, get both knees up, because I'm sorry, I value 90 feet at that point, because 90 feet is the difference between 1 hit tying the game and probably 2 hits tying the game. Or, a walk and a hit, 2 guys needing to do something to move the guy. So to me, it should be situational. I'm not like fully against the one knee, as much as it kind of hurts me to my core watching these guys let balls by them. Like I'm not fully against it. I'm all for trying to steal strikes and everything, but it should be situationally based. And continuing on that, Bailey can't block balls, and it's not purely because of the one knee. I've seen plenty of balls that are either right in front of him or very slightly to a side, like where he easily could shift in front of him, and he tries to backhand, and he doesn't even try to get in front of him. Like his mechanics are crap. Like I don't have a nice way of putting it. His mechanics are crap blocking balls. If he just fixed that, he would be at minimum a league average blocking catcher, or probably even above league average, because really it's a problem around the league. Like it's just stop trying to backhand the ball. Like it's not. So, yeah.
And Frederick, this isn't just going and constantly ripping Bailey. He's not a bad player. He's still young. He's somebody you want to build around. I mean, like we've said, he's better than most guys around the league. It's just these little things you do have to clean up when your margin for error is so much smaller with this offense. Going back to previous Giants teams, of course, we can't compare Bailey to Buster Posey, but part of the reason why the Giants were such a scrappy team and able to win championships with a lot less talent than other teams is because they did all the little things right. And that's exactly what this team doesn't do. They do not emphasize fundamentals whatsoever. And it's these tight playoff games where it's the team that doesn't rely on fundamentals and goes and makes these really stupid errors, like trying to backpick somebody at first. It goes down into right field in a 1-1 game in the 8th inning. And then there you go. There's the lead. And you just lost a playoff game in a 5-game series. Those are the things that kill you. And now the Giants aren't there quite yet, so it's not a huge concern yet. But these are things that you do want him to work on, because the potential defensively is, it is very high, but he needs to get that down, because you don't want this to be something that just sticks with him throughout his whole career. Because this isn't a guy like Real Muto where the offense is going to be a little bit better. His game on the offensive side has improved, but he's still not somebody that's going to hit 20 bombs more than likely. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. What's a little disappointing.
David,
go for it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, David, his comment doesn't help. The pitchers can't hold anyone on. And this is why, if for anyone that's listening to me this year, I have almost not said a single word about Bailey's throwing, other than early in the year where he just made some very ill-advised even attempts where it was just kind of arrogant issue. It was like, dude, you had no chance at this. And then he ended up throwing it into center field. He cleaned that up. Like, he doesn't have a chance on most of these. And I wonder if some of the sidearm crap and some of some of that stuff, you see him throwing kind of change ups where they have like this huge tail on them. I kind of wonder if some of that is just due to the fact that he feels like he has to be like insanely fast and have this insane pop time, and because the pitchers just aren't giving him a chance. I'd like to see more of I'm not trying to be like picky, but I'd love to see if we had pitchers that held runners better, if it would be a little more traditional, a little more accurate at that point, and he'd slow it down a tenth of a second. Because the reality is he could slow it down a tenth of a second and he'd still have a sub-2 pop. Like, it's still going to be like low 1.9s. So it's like, that's still really, really good. And he's got a great arm. So
yeah,
we're nitpicking, I mean, like that shows like he is a great player. Like, we are nitpicking on this, but it's like you guys said, it's just the little things that separate him from being an elite defender. Because I think he's the one guy in baseball that can be closer to the level of those, great players we mentioned before, those great defensive catchers. It's just kind of a laziness and an arrogance about his game at the same time, sometimes in some aspects.
I have a question. What position did Bob Melvin play when he played Major League Baseball?
Catcher.
Yeah.
So my question is to the general audience: if he played catcher as a Major League Baseball player, and one of his cornerstones is a catcher in Major League Baseball, why, apparently, based off the actions, what we've seen through X amount of games, why hasn't Bob Melvin at all come up and worked in some sense, because I haven't heard anything through the grapevine, with Bailey? Bochy was a catcher at the Major League level. Jonah Heim was Jonah Heim turned into a freaking all-star under Bruce Bochy last year. Yeah, understandably, you do have Simeon, you do have Seager, you did bring in DeGrom, you have some guys, but those guys don't create you an all-star. You still have to work on becoming an all-star. Jonah Heim's also a switch hitting catcher behind the plate. So my question is, when it comes down to Bailey, is what sort of development are they coming with their manager, who was a catcher? And catchers, historically speaking, are the best managers in baseball. We could talk about Yogi, Matheny, Ned Yost, Bruce Bochy, the list goes on. What apparent structure has Bo Mel set for Bailey to even improve his game? And as Cody was saying, his pop time is some of the best in baseball. His arm is one of, if not the best in baseball. If they're able to steal, if it's not the pitcher's fault, off Bailey, most likely it's because his mechanics of the one knee. How much easier is it to quickly turn your hips when you're 2 knees up than 1 knee up? That's extra movement you're allowing to the base runner. So to an extent, I do 95% I give to the pitchers that they're not doing a good job holding on the runners. But there's also 5% credit to where it's Bailey, you're missing by a foot or two. That's your mechanics, dude. That is you with the arrogance in play, at least the appearance. I'm not calling Bailey arrogant or anything. It's just the appearance of his style of play. It's what are you doing to adapting? And when it comes to that run game with him and the pitchers, there's no rapport. I don't see any sort of that's my dog, you're my dog, bro. Like we're battery mates. We're going to war together. There's catchers. My best catcher was my Sunday league catcher, and there was times where I don't think he throws down a sign and it's let's go. I don't see that rapport that Bailey has with a lot of his staff and relievers, and I think that can contribute to the lack of running game and overall that essence. Because Bailey's this close to being elite. Posey's a Hall of Famer. I don't expect Bailey to be a Hall of Famer. I'm expecting Bailey to be a 10-year player who could be a cornerstone player like a Mike Matheny. I wouldn't mind having a Mike Matheny career before the injury for a Patrick Bailey. I don't expect Hall of Fame. I just expect quality.
And I think he's better offensively. Like he's already better than Matheny was. Matheny he was a no bat. Like,
220, 230.
Yeah. You go off like OPS plus and stuff like that. Matheny was like a Nick Ahmed. It was like 70. Like he was not a bat at all. So like Bailey definitely could be a guy you build around for 10 years, you know? Exactly. And I mean, I think the thing I give Posey the most credit for in his time was he was just so steady. I think in his time, he was the most steady catcher in the league. Like he made very few mistakes. He wasn't always the flashiest. You know, Yachty got all the love, but Posey made like the least mistakes in baseball. It felt like just so fundamental.
Statistically speaking.
Yeah. Oh, go for it.
My bad. Statistically speaking, Posey was actually better than Yachty. The only thing that Yachty truly had was just the reputation of the run game. But if you look at the statistics, less people ran on the Giants when Posey was behind the squat than Yachty. And there was less pass balls in the same amount of time, 3 rings, and he called better postseason games. So, I mean, I know we're biased, but you know, it's a little different with Posey, but sorry for interrupting. That's all.
Oh, you're good. I mean, Posey very obviously got robbed of at least 2 Gold Gloves. Like absolutely. Yachty won a couple that were just purely reputation. You know, is what it is.
Yep.
So
yeah, and Frederick, going back to the start of the Bailey conversation, we kind of just got down a little bit of a rabbit hole. It wasn't that we were saying he's the biggest problem, because that's not true at all. That's not what we're saying at all. It was just me
100%.
more posing the question of how much influence does he have on pitch calling versus Price? Is Price predetermining a lot of this stuff for pitchers before they enter games, or is it solely on Bailey to call pitches like it was for Buster? Because I know they do give Bailey a lot of that leeway, but we're just posing that question. Is he influencing all of that, or is Price coming in and telling him what the game plan is ahead of time?
Yeah, we definitely just went down a rabbit hole. That wasn't. We're not trying to clown on Bailey or anything like that. You know, he is very clearly a building block cornerstone piece of the organization right now. Mm-hmm. Like he's not going anywhere. He's going to be there, barring any kind of injuries and things like that, because there are concussion concerns with him. Like that's a very real thing. I do think the Giants need to look into, you know, getting a young catcher in their system that is fairly highly touted, just because he has had a bunch of these between college and professional ball. So that's certainly a concern. But we're going to jump over to Cameron. We're going to try and bring some, you know, good stuff in, because I do want to circle back eventually on the trades and like which guys specifically. Like I want to get your guys of like who we want to see moved, who you're kind of open to moving, things like that. But first, we're going to jump in on Cameron's comment here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the some of the good, because there was some good this week. You know, namely a guy guy like Tyler Fitzgerald, for instance. But but so Cameron says, Cody, what are your thoughts on lack of base coaching skills on this? We have 4 guys on our roster that have clocked 20+ steal seasons. Person leading out is having a career high. Oh yeah, like with Chapman. I think that he's asking with Chapman, he's having his career high right now. Because he has 10?
10, 11. It was somewhere between that 9 and 12 range. I kind of forget, because he's sneaky. He's a smart runner.
Yeah. I mean, I've been impressed that he's, you know, ran as much as he did. I've always heard he's a fast runner, but he doesn't steal bags. Like he's just Like that's what he's been. He'll get the extra bag all day long. Yaz has always kind of done that. He's been just a good base runner, gets good reads, takes extra bags. So they do have value in those respects, but they're not necessarily the, biggest base stealers. And, this team, I get earlier in the year why they weren't running, in the sense that they were stealing bags at just the successful steal rate was so low that they couldn't just continue to run into outs because they were stealing bags. They were being successful like 17% less than league average. Like it was terrible. So you can't just run just for the sake of running. But that said, if you do bring a guy like Matos and you have a guy like Ramos and maybe next year a guy like Lee, and even you look at a guy like Casey Schmidt, who down in the minors has like 10 plus stolen bases right now. You have and Fitzgerald obviously and Wisely, and you have all these guys that easily could get you 10, 15 bags. And in Fitzgerald's case, he might steal you 30 plus. And then there's more guys obviously down in the minors, guys like Grant McRae, that if he figures it out, like he can, steal a lot if he were up here. But yeah, I mean, it's very odd to me that the organization as a whole just does not run, especially in the park they play. You play in a park where you should be grabbing 9 speed guys and trying to just get a bunch of athletic freaks and put them in your lineup. Guys that have, a little bit of pop, can put it in the gap, can put it down the line and get you, look what Tyler Fitzgerald did yesterday. Hit a ball in the gap. And early on, that was the difference in the game. Like it was a 1-1 game when he did it, but he put it in the gap and he made up his mind quick. Like he was like, I'm going to second and I'm going to make them make a perfect throw to get me. And they almost did, but he got an extra bag out of it. And it's just, you should be having like at minimum 5 guys in your lineup like that can just haul ass. Just that's my opinion, especially with the park they play in.
Ricky, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Is it easier to run bases or make a perfect relay cut?
Well, I'm running bases and, taking advantage of mistakes. Plain and simple. I mean, even at the big league level, we see it all the time. I mean, the Giants are great at doing it. They're great at not communicating on routine fly balls too. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think me and Cody have been saying this for a while. It's, if you do not have power, you need to find other ways to manufacture runs. You cannot be doing the single thing and hoping you string together 4 to 5 singles to get a rally going in an inning. It is too hard to do that in the major leagues. It's like a death by a million paper cuts is the Giants offense basically, because you're just never getting homers and you're not stringing together enough extra base hits. So it's like you need to have one or the other, find a direction and stick to that. And I think we finally saw a little bit of that in this last draft for the Giants, where it was just heavy on power because they already do have some of these guys in the system that are more toolsy and have the speed to add in. So it's like, hopefully in these next couple of years, we kind of see that blend of the speed at the bottom, maybe a little bit at the top, and then you have a middle of the order that actually provides some power. And that's just what's, I think, really frustrated Giants fans this year, is just the offense is just very bland and dry. And I think that's definitely a change they need to make in the organization.
I'm with you. For me, in this ballpark, when it comes to this organization, small ball is the way to go. And when I talk about small ball, particularly to the Giants within Oracle, doubles, even though they're considered extra base hits, in this ballpark, I consider it small ball because this ballpark's so big. It's just a double kind of feels like a single sometimes. Doubles, singles, hit and run, stolen bases. You have 4 or 5 guys in your lineup giving you 20 plus doubles, 10 plus stolen bases with a 270 average or higher. You're going to find yourself in the World Series, because you know why? That's exactly how the Giants won their first 3. You look at Angel Pagan and all of these guys in their lineup, none outside of Posey and maybe Hunter Pence. Most of them batted below 300. They were that 265 to 290 mark with 26 doubles, 30 doubles, 15 stolen bases, 12 stolen bases. the athleticism and the freak athletes, as Cody was saying, and as you were saying too, Ricky, is that's within our ballpark and our organization. That's how we're successful.
Yeah.
If we run into a Bonds, great. If we get a Harper, fantastic. But if we were able to string 3 World Series in 5 years without any big name, I'm with you, boys. It's just develop guys that can go sideline to sideline and run. Fitzgerald, I mean, to me, has been a huge spark plug. I wasn't a huge fan of him coming into the season, but after that, going into that Blue Jay series and what he did then, and then they sat him. No, that dynamic brings completely different level of energy to this team, and you boys are completely right, 100%.
Yeah, you know who's to me, like, if you just like took a position player group and like, if you could like pick a position player group from an era and just slap them on this roster as like the blueprint of how I think the Giants position player group should
curious.
We talked about him earlier. The 2014 and 2015 Kansas City Royals. If you could take those 9 guys as a blueprint and stick them in the lineup in Oracle Park, you would win a lot of freaking games. Like
you're winning staff. You're winning 100 games a year. I'm telling like that you're rattling off World Series berth after World Series berth. Like that's 100%.
Yeah. They were like the kings of manufacturing runs. They were very low on home run totals both those years. Like they grinder mentalities, put the ball in play, like not even to get into all the defense that they played, like great defense across the field. But, the grinder mentality, put the ball in play, a lot of pretty high average guys, bat control guys, and then speed, like just the speed on top of all of that. I mean, it took the Giants, realistically, that Giants team, even though it was funny, they actually won, I think, the same amount of games in the regular season in 2014. But it was very clear to me that Royals team was better.
100%.
The Giants just got one of the greatest postseason performances of all time. Like
100%.
Just they ran into the Madison Bumgarner buzzsaw, and that was what it was. Which and that's part of why he's he is who he is.
100%.
I will.
Go for it.
I will say though, something that is very different about those past Giants teams and what we have now. Like I said, it's just a bunch of singles. Is even though those teams didn't have a lot of power, you always had stability in the middle of the order with Posey, and then there was always somebody with him, whether it was Pablo, it was, I know it sounds funny to say, but like a Michael Morse, a Pat Burrell, a Cody Ross. Now, they weren't always there in the regular season, but in the playoffs, I'm talking. And I mean, I don't know if I mentioned, Huff, Pablo. You always had a couple of guys around Posey in the middle of the order that could provide you a little bit of extra base power. And you always had your very old school table setters. You always had a Andres Torres, you had a Gregor Blanco, Angel Pagan, and then you always had that classic 2-hitter, Freddie Sanchez, Joe Panic. You always had that guy. So you had the speed at the top, and then you had somebody that could steal a base, and then you had a line drive type hitter that was perfect in the 2-hole. You could put on hit and runs all the time. That was a classic Bochy move. And you manufacture offense just off of a walk and a hit. Sometimes you don't even need an extra base hit doing that, but this team doesn't play that old school brand of baseball, and they don't have the power to go with it. So that's why you're just seeing it not really produce much results. So
that 2012 lineup was solid, man. Like the Giants actually had in 2012, even after Melky got hurt, or got popped for steroids, not hurt. After he got popped, like the top 5 in that lineup with Pagan and then Scutero, and then having some order
Scutero
of having some order Pablo, Posey, Pence, like that top 5. That is how the part, like you said, it's a steady presence in the middle. They had 3 of those guys that were really solid, and then they had a little bit of speed at the top, and then a guy in Scutero that was just like as good at bat control as any player in the league.
This is my last note because I have to
Yeah.
get going, unfortunately, boys.
Yeah.
But you boys just said two things that are considered taboo within the Giants social media world: batting average and old school. Those are 110% of the things that this team and this organization is lacking. Old school is high IQ baseball, in my opinion. It's understanding situational hitting. It's understanding the situation of the base pass. It's the first and third, gap to gap, line drive, when to steal, when not to steal. And batting average, let's not that doesn't matter anymore, boys. Like, but to me it does, because at the end of the day, the more hits you get, like a Luis Arias and Scooter Rose and Panics and Posies and Pence, the more likely, whether you want to believe in the analytics or not, you're gonna score at that point.
Yeah.
And also going to 2014 with that Royals World Series, that Michael Morse home run in the 8th inning against the Cardinals does not get the love it deserves, because that's what led Ishikawa to hit the greatest home run in Giants history. Because that Michael Morse home run, as much as I love looking at that Travis Ishikawa highlight, that Michael Morse home run, you want to talk about being clutch and ice in the veins? Pinch hit home run after losing your starting job due to injury and coming in with a positive attitude and crushing that.
Yeah. Michael Morse, I remember him hitting a few balls in that first half where I was like, holy crap. Like, that was a guy with huge power. I remember him taking one out to right center as a righty, and it went like 8 rows up. Like, it wasn't like just barely, and that was back when the wall was back. Like, it was, that guy had huge power, and that was in a night game too. Like,
he was fun to watch. But anyway, gentlemen, good luck the rest of the night. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Ricky and Cody. Cody, absolute pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks for joining, man.
Of course, just got some personal business I gotta take care of, but
I'll keep listening. Good, man.
Awesome, yeah. Have a great one.
Cameron actually just broke some news. Rosarena, according to Ken Rosenthal, has gone over to the Mariners. So I like to see that, because they could use a bat like that and not going to the Dodgers, being a pretty good playoff, big moment hitter. Don't want to see him go to a team like the Dodgers.
That made a lot of sense for the Mariners.
Yeah. I
thought Conforto would make sense for them too, honestly. But
no, I like that for them. I mean, they're a team that needs to do something for those fans up there. I mean, that's up in your territory, but man, they got to do something to break out of this funk. They got a nice young team. Got to do something.
Julio being the way he has kind of killed him. Like that. If he was at least playing, close to what he's known for the last few years, they'd easily be 10 to 15 games over 500 right now, like easily, even with all the other struggles around them. So yeah, I think Lamont Wade would make a lot of sense there. I see Frederick saying it's supposed to overpay for Lamont or Conforto. Yeah, I mean, I think Wade would make sense, but the Mariners are a little like the Giants in the sense that I think Lamont would be more valuable to a team like the Braves or the Phillies, that he could just get on base and let the guys that mash get him in. Like,
Yankees.
That's where I think he needs to go. Flores to the Mets. Are we going to get a Wilmer crying in a Giants uniform while getting traded to the Mets? No, he's on the 10-day IL. They can't, but it would be hilarious.
I'm telling you, Flores to the Mets crying, and then Giants trade for Flores' younger brother on the Tigers. Get a little pitching prospect in just for Dan the Man.
Caveman would be Steve Carell in the Office kid, where he's like, no, God, please, no. Oh, God.
That'd be hilarious. Well, we'll see if this Randy trade gets the ball rolling on some more trades. I mean, only have a few days left, and I know years past, nothing really much has happened until deadline day, but you never know. You never know. There's only a handful of sellers.
Yeah. That's more reason for the Giants to sell. But all right, so I'm gonna get your list of guys, and we'll talk about some good things with the Giants before we close out, because it's like I mentioned, that especially a guy like Fitzgerald, there has been some good developments since we last went live. Like, there are some good things about the organization, even though it doesn't feel like it, because it sucks to watch them lose and come out when they knew they needed to win and just come out stale and boring and flat and all the awful adjectives we could use to describe their play the last week. But who are the guys that, if you're, you put on your GM cap, who are the guys that you would like absolutely trade, like not think twice, like no matter what you get, just move them? And then are there anyone that you think about trading and it's just kind of return dependent,
Yeah. First off, I would definitely ship Conforto out. Nothing against him. He's been an okay player, up and down, streaky type of guy, but him being a rental, I would definitely trade him out. I think Wade is somebody you definitely consider. I don't think he's somebody you absolutely have to get rid of, just because there is kind of a little bit of a hole at first. I think we're all on the same page with Flores. I would definitely get rid of him. Yaz has 1 year left. I wouldn't be super mad if they kept him just because he has 1 year left on his contract. It's kind of whatever at this point. But he's somebody probably not going to get a ton back for, but I wouldn't mind seeing if they don't get rid of Conforto, just because I would like to see room opened up for Matos. And then even, we've talked about Encarnacion. He can play outfield and first. So that kind of would open up a spot for him if you got rid of Wade as well. So it's just kind of time to experiment with guys a little bit, because they're getting pretty far out of the race at this point. So I'd like to see that. As I mentioned earlier with you and Josh, I would definitely get rid of Snell, just because of the contract situation. Chapman, just going down the list here. Chapman, I would, if you get a good package for him, I would definitely do it in a heartbeat. If not, I really don't mind keeping him, just because of the uncertainties with Schmidt, even though I would like to kind of see him get a little run here at the end of the year. And that's kind of where I'm at, but I look at some of the bullpen guys. I'd really focus on keeping, Miller, Rodriguez, Walker, and then look to ship out the Rogers brothers and Doval. So that's kind of where I'm at with the pen and the rest of those guys. As far as sell type moves, we can get into buying type moves here in a minute, but that's who I'd pretty much sell off. I'd go that route.
Yeah. I think if I had a list of like absolutes, Conforto, Tyro, Chapman, like you said, Yaz is kind of a maybe. He's a good leader. He's got some value. I would personally look to move him, but I could live with him sticking around. Flores, and then the Rogers brothers. Like, those are the guys that I'd be like. And the Roger brothers, like, really, it's not that I think they're bad players or anything. They would have value to this team trying to compete in 2025. But after seeing what what Miami just got back for AJ Puck, it's like, dude, make a move like that. You're not going to get quite that, but you should be able to get a good prospect out of those guys. And then the return dependent guys for me are the Blake Snells. Because, like I said, I'm a little on the fence. I still think he opts in as it stands. Now, if he puts together another dominant start, I think he's going to make one more start before the deadline. So if he puts together another one, then, you might start thinking a little bit harder about that. But, like I said, return dependent for me. So I think Snell, Doval, and Webb are the three guys that, especially Webb. And then Doval, like, I'm not selling low on him in the sense that, some team, I'm not taking some guy that's like 8th on the team's prospect list. Like, if I'm giving with his, pedigree and his contract situation, if I'm going to trade Camilo Doval, it better be a top 100 prospect coming back, like minimum. Like, you're getting a top 100 guy. So, like, that's, and then Webb, I already laid that out earlier. Like, with Webb, it needs to be multiple top 50 guys, major league ready, or very close to. to entertain that kind of deal. So that's my list personally. Now,
Yeah, and I think a guy like Norby is not crazy to expect back in a, say it was just a Doval trade and you're not throwing in somebody with him. I think that's totally reasonable to expect, because you look at some of these other guys with a lot less of a track record than Doval, and they're getting pretty significant returns. And I'm not just talking in this year, I'm talking previous years as well. I mean, we saw the D-backs acquire the Mariners closer last year, and you look at some of these other hauls, and you can get decent stuff in return for just a single reliever, especially with these last few years, how few teams are actually selling because of the current wild card format. But that being said, with Snell being one of those trade dependent guys, as far as what you could get back, that's why I'm pretty big on trying to package him with Doval, especially because of these current concerns with Crochet and his contract issues, and then his innings limit. He's already almost at his max innings for the year, so that makes it kind of tricky as well. So teams might be backing off him, and that might be a good time for the Giants to jump in with a frontline starter type like Snell. So for me, it's like, get a max return, and I feel like you can really maximize Snell's value by packaging him in with somebody else that has value on that pitching side somewhere where the Orioles could really use some more depth.
Yeah. And I don't think the contract will scare people off with Snell as much as it does with a guy like Chapman. Like I do. I think teams understand, like with Snell, that you're either going to get a guy that's, and the big issue is if he gets hurt. Like if you're trading for Snell, you're going to be thinking, okay, hopefully he's going to be elite down the stretch. And if he opts out, whatever. Like we're trading for him for right now. And if he does opt in, like if he's just solid and he opts in, you're going to be getting a guy that's pitching for a contract the following year. So it's like, I don't think the deal scares people off with Snell as much as they made it sound when like Carlos Rodon was going to free agency. But Rodon had a much larger injury history, like of major injuries at the time. So I think that was a little scarier for teams. That's just my personal speculation here. I don't know. I'm not in anyone's front office. So.
And going back on Rodon, a lot of what drew teams away too is the Giants were going to get draft pick compensation back for him anyways if they didn't trade him. And you have that with Rodon versus Snell, who, that, like you said, that contract is very low risk in my opinion. Okay, yeah, you're going to pay him a little bit of money, but if he does opt in and he has a bad, second half of this year to go along with what he did in the first half, but you're only stuck with him 1 year and you still have the high upside of a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, along with the fact that he's going to be playing on the final year of his contract and going to be highly incentivized to have a good year and be healthy and come into spring training prepared if he does have to opt in. So I think there's a ton of upside for teams with a Snell trade. So like I said, I'd package him with Doval, or say you want to trade him and you don't want to get rid of Doval, throw Tyler Rogers in there. You can't tell me he doesn't have a ton of value, because even though he struggles in the ninth, his ERA on the season, I think, is like 2.2 in the eighth inning. So he's a pretty high level eighth inning guy. So
yeah, like he makes all of us uncomfortable when you watch him, because he always feels like every single time he goes out there, you get like a 17 hopper and a wounded duck into the outfield, and all of a sudden there's two guys on every single time almost. Yeah. Today, obviously, he hasn't given up a couple home runs in a while, it feels like. So today was a little bit of an outlier. Yeah, it kind of sucks that Nick Ahmed hit one of them. I tweeted out, for anybody here that saw it, I tweeted out that Nick Ahmed is still helping the Giants lose games, even though they got rid of him. But yeah, and then Ohtani got him, and it's like, yeah, it's Ohtani, whatever. Like, he's going to get people. But yeah, I mean, he's been really good. Like, he's constantly up there in usage, as you mentioned. He's been one of the better high usage relievers in the sense that he's also highly effective, especially in the 8th inning. He'll have value somewhere. So yeah, I mean, I could see them pairing them up. I think I could see a team like the Orioles really being into that. They don't have a lot of big money on the books or anything too, so I think they could handle a half a season of Snell. And even if Snell opts in, like I don't think that 31 million is going to bury them for one season. I mean, this team is packing the house every night in Baltimore with just a super exciting young team. So I don't see the money, even though they're a smaller market, I don't see the money being a huge issue for them in that situation.
I don't either, and especially given the situation with Corbin Burns going forward as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at. Also, just to add into the trade conversation, it was Mariners number 12 and 22 prospects in the Arozarena trade. So, and they have kind of a middle of the pack farm system, kind of similar to the Giants, probably a little bit better, deeper farm system, but they're pretty similar to where the Giants stand for anybody that's familiar with the farm systems.
Yeah. And I mean, and Randy is, Randy's more of a name right now than anything. I mean, he does have 15 home runs and 16 stolen bases, but he's a guy with a 712 OPS, and he's not a great defender. He's okay in the outfield. But I think that's a trade you're making because we've all seen what happens when he gets going. Like he can be really, really good player when he gets going, and he's got a good playoff pedigree. So it makes sense for Seattle, especially given the cost. It's not that's not a steep price. So we'll see. I think Chapman would probably get you a similar return realistically. Maybe a little bit. He's having a better season than Arozarena, so especially because of the defense. So maybe a little bit better prospect. Top.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at with that is Chapman should definitely be able to get you a similar type return in a guy who, again, there's no guarantee he is back next year. I think there's a good likelihood of that, but he's definitely somebody that could get the same type of return. And keep in mind, Chapman's contract, it's a little bit more complicated because he can leave versus Arozarena. He's arbitration eligible for 2 more seasons and won't be a free agent until 2027. So I think for the Rays, it's more cutting costs there, like they usually always do, kind of like the situation with the A's. But that's kind of the deal with Randy and why they're shipping him out.
They're not really competitive right now, so it's
yeah,
right
I mean
for
that
them
too.
to make that trade.
They're always looking ahead to get younger while these guys still have value before they have to start going through arbitration. So
yeah. So here's, and I brought this up yesterday on the other channel, but my thing with Chapman is, and it's nothing like I like him as a player. Like he's having a good season. There are some deficiencies in his game. Obviously, he's a good leader. He's a good clubhouse guy. Plays the game the right way. Really good defensively. Has some power. He has a ton of extra base hits this year. I mean, he has like 14 home runs, and I think he has like 24 doubles or something like that to go with it, or 23. So he's got a ton of extra base hits. He's kind of you when they traded for him, the one thing I said about him was like this guy's averaged like 55 to 60 extra base hits a season for the last 3 years, and he has like 38 or 39 already. So he's kind of been exactly what you expected when you like he's given the exact production I think most reasonable people would have expected out of him. Now the problem is he's being asked to do more than that because of the lineup around him, and that's just not who he is. And that's a roster construction issue, not a Chapman issue. But that said, with the odds that I do believe he is going to opt out, and even if he ends up back here, like you said, I think there's a good chance he would return, even if he does opt out. But he's going to do what's best for him financially. And Boris is still his agent. Like I think he opts out, but I think personally, if the Giants are going to consider giving him any kind of longer term deal, and that means 3 or 4 years with a decent, and I say longer term because he is going to be 32 going into next season.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think next season will be his age 32 season. So 3 or 4 year deal. Like to me, it is irresponsible to make that deal without knowing what you have in Casey Schmidt, because you're going to have to pay him $20+ million a year to do that. You're going to lock him in as an aging third baseman who's going to be exiting his prime in this deal. So to me, it is irresponsible to do that if you don't know for sure what you have in Casey Schmidt, or at least you don't have a better idea. And that, to me, that's where it makes sense to trade Chapman, give Casey Schmidt the last 55, 60 games, whatever's left in the season. It's like 57 or whatever games left right now. Give him the rest of the season and see if a lot of the improved plate discipline, he has 15 home runs in the minors, or between Sacramento and San Francisco this season. He's doing a good job of, drawing some walks. He's making good adjustments mid at bat. I've seen him hitting breaking balls better than he has in the past. I've seen, everything about his offensive game it looks better and more major league quality with the at bats that I've seen him take in Sacramento. So I would like to see if it can translate. I'm not making a prediction that it will. He might just stink. Like, that's the reality. Like, he may just never be a good player. But if he is a good player, you're paying him like 3% of what you would be paying Matt Chapman. And that's just, to me, it comes down to simple asset allocation. Because if you can pay him and he can become a, 270, 280 hitter, I don't think he'll never be a high on base guy, but if he can be a 270, 280 hitter and have a 340 on base, but then hit close to 20 homers, steal you 10 bags, and he's a really good defensive third baseman, like, give me the guy that's going to be 26 on opening day next season that's super cheap for 6 years. Like, that's where I'm at when it comes to that situation. And if he sucks, go sign Chapman in the offseason, like, or Ha-Seong Kim or Alex Bregman, or make a trade for a guy, or move Luciano to third or Fitzgerald to third or whatever. There are so many options if he doesn't work out. So.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of right where I was going to be headed was, I would be more than fine with trading Chapman for like a top 15, closer to 15 prospect in a decent system, and then get like a guy in the 25 to 30 range for Chapman. And then you give Schmidt playing time, and then that way you get to see him get a decent amount of at-bats at the big league level. And then you also have the opportunity to go and get a guy like Kim and pay that money you normally pay Chapman towards somebody like Kim, who has the versatility of playing multiple positions. And he can be your temporary shortstop until you decide what the hell you're going to do with that position, versus Chapman, who you aren't going to play there because he's so good at third base. So, you just don't want to have this glaring hole at shortstop forever. You do at some point have to address that, even if it's a guy like Kim who might just fill that spot for 2 to 3 years. And then hopefully one of these prospects develops and you have somebody that can actually stay there.
So I think what I like most about Kim, aside from like some of the stuff that he brings on the offensive side, because, he doesn't hit for a high average, similar to Chapman. He's going to be a lower average guy, and he's going to draw a ton of walks. Like that, they both are very similar in that respect. Kim strikes out less and hits for a little less power, less extra base hits as a whole. But he also steals a bunch of bags. And the other part that I like is he's borderline elite, like high level defensively, but he's like borderline elite at second, short, and third. So it does not stop you from signing anybody at any of those positions or pursuing anybody. So if an elite player comes available, you're never going to have a situation where like, we already got this guy. If you have Chapman for 3 years or 4 years, and let's say, and obviously this isn't happening, but had the Red Sox or the Guardians or whatever, one of these teams like randomly was like, we're going to trade, Rafi Devers or something like that. You're not sitting there going, oh crap, we already got Chapman's clogging up third base. Like Kim, you can just move, whoever it is. If you trade for a shortstop, you can kick him to second or third or whatever. So.
And Kim's not a guy you're going to break the bank over either. His offensive numbers have kind of declined a little bit recently. He's down to slightly below 700 OPS, so that's not great, but
Yeah.
you're more looking at it for the speed and the defensive versatility. And being at age 28, it's not somebody you need to, keep around or give a contract to for like 5 years, So, and that's kind of, if Farhan does hang around, then that's definitely somebody he covets, because then it gives him that flexibility, financially. So that's just something I look at. And then again, going into the future, we don't know what's going to become of Walker Martin, some of these other guys that are, future middle infielders. So should be interesting there. And again, the
The
connections
ACL
with
game
Lee.
going.
What's up?
Oh, I was saying, how's that AC? I think today's the last day of the ACL, I believe.
Oh yeah. I was checking those numbers earlier. Couple of our guys had okay games. Let me go back to that.
Yeah. I do
I
anticipate
know.
that Walker, Martin, Reckley, Arias, I do think they're going to at least move. I think Reckley for sure finishes in San Jose. He had a really strong season in the ACL. I could see them holding Martin and Arias back and just giving them work in the, in Papago. But I would like to see them down there. But
Yeah, I mean, Martin, 2 hits tonight, another walk. He does have the 2 strikeouts, but you're seeing him start to string together quite a few hits. He did have a double. Ortega, he's down there. He hit a triple tonight. He's had an okay game, couple strikeouts, but just getting back, obviously. Good to see him get a little bit of time in here at the end of the year. Reckley, another hit and an RBI. He's up to a 949 OPS. So that's really encouraging to see out of him, because his pro career started off pretty rough, being a pretty high end international guy.
he was like number 9 in that class. He was pretty highly rated. But I mean, he's got a 950 almost OPS in the complex league. So, good for him. He'll get into pro ball, or he'll get into the full season ball here soon enough. And, keep it up. I mean, you just never know. This is why I don't give up on prospects. Like when they have a bad year, when they're 16, 17 years old, it's like,
Yeah.
I know Johnny Level had been doing pretty decently down in the DCL. I'd have to look at his exact numbers because I haven't really looked in the last few days, but Level has been holding his own as a 17-year-old down there, which is good to see. Frederick, are we sure Dakota Jordan is going to sign, right? I think he does. Like, I haven't heard anything that it's going to be an issue, and I do believe he is going to get massively above slot. When I say that, I think even as a 4th-round pick, I think he's going to end up with end of 1st, early 2nd round pick money. Like, if you've seen how much they've saved on all these guys, I mean, they signed a bunch of college guys that they were giving like $17,000 bonuses to, where the bonus was like $175,000 to $200,000, and they did it with like 2 or 3 picks. And then Tibbs they signed for $500K under slot.
Yeah.
You can tell like they went under slot on a ton of guys, and then there's Jordan and who'd they take right after? I think it was a Caleb. Drawing a blank, you're gonna have to bail me out on that one. But the guy they drafted in the 5th, also
the 5th. Are you talking the first baseman from Maine?
Yeah, it might be. Maybe I was thinking of someone else.
Jenkins?
No, I think that was. I don't know. Because there's the 4th and 5th round picks, Jordan and whoever they drafted in the 5th. Those are the 2 guys that haven't signed yet, I believe. At least that's what I read. But anyway, I think Jordan's going to go way above slot. Like, he's going to be a Harrison situation. I mean, for those of you that remember, Harrison was drafted in the comp round part of the 3rd round. So it's the end of the 3rd round. And he fell that far because of signability concerns for teams. And the Giants gave him basically late 1st round money and a $2 million plus signing bonus. So I think Jordan's going to be a similar situation. They're going to go way over. But
I think
people say Frederick Jordan, like within a day, posted an edited, Photoshop picture of himself in a Giants jersey. So I'm not usually big on the whole social media game, but the fact that this guy is already posting stuff like that doesn't scream a guy that doesn't have the intentions of signing. So
Yeah, and this stuff is not always, but the Giants are pretty good about planning this stuff out and looking ahead as far as slot value goes and planning it out. I mean, if you guys remember, they did the same thing with Maui Ahuna last year in the third round. He was a guy that they were trying to overpay given, his draft grades. He was supposed to be a guy that would go higher. Like Cody said, Kyle Harrison, they had to do the same thing so he wouldn't go to UCLA. They do this every single year, and I definitely see him being a guy that signs. Going back on the fifth rounder, it might be Jacob Christian out of San Diego that you were thinking
that's who
of.
it was.
Okay.
That was the other guy that hadn't signed.
Yeah, I was going to say almost everybody else has signed it. I think it's just literally those two guys are the last ones.
Yeah. And Christian isn't a senior, right?
No, I think he was a junior. Let me see. I just had him.
So he's going to have some leverage if he wants to go back. Now, granted, it's a risk because you go back and you don't play phenomenally, or even if you do have a good year like Tibbs, like you go back and you probably are going to go under slot because
Christian was a junior.
Oh yeah, so what's the alternative? You're going to go to independent ball? Like no, you're not. So that's why I got like Tibbs. And you know what? I will give, as somebody who gives Farhan a lot of crap for a lot of things, I do give credit for the Tibbs pick. I know you and I both really liked that pick. I give credit for him doing the Tibbs pick and then getting Dakota Jordan after, in the sense that, one of the things that I think both of us said was we didn't want to see him just like make a reach pick that they were going to pay way under slot, but it was like not a great value. Tibbs, they're able to go under slot by $500,000, but the value to me was right. Like they picked a guy that in the spot that he was slated to go. So I'll give credit for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100% on that. I do think that Chapman and Snell signings kind of forced him into that strategy, but it was something I was a little bit worried about because the value play is cool at times. It does give you the opportunity to hopefully get a deeper draft by getting some higher end talent in the third and fourth rounds. But it is also risky when you do end up with, I mean, I didn't have a huge issue at the time with the Hunter Bishop draft pick, but sometimes you do end up with a guy like that in a draft where you may end up with, Kyle Harrison as well. So it's kind of tough. You got to be careful with that because if that third or fourth rounder doesn't hit and then your first rounder doesn't hit, then you could be looking at a draft that just doesn't produce anything for you. But overall, I was very happy with the a little bit of a philosophy change as far as going for power because historically, at least in my lifetime, the Giants have done a lot of the hit tool play and not really gone with the power guys. And that gets very frustrating. I know that, they look at it safer to go with the hit tool guys, but a lot of times it's like if they don't end up hitting for a high average, you have nothing else to fall back on other than maybe defense. And at that point, you better be a high-level defender like a Brandon Crawford if you're not going to hit for power or have speed to add in, especially at a middle infield spot.
Yeah.
So
when you're trying to get power, like there's only so many avenues you can go. Like you either have to go hit tool and hope it's a hit tool on a guy that's body isn't like, developed yet that you think is going to grow into the power, or you got to go, maybe a guy like kind of like Ramos where he has the power, but he doesn't efficiently use it because he hits a lot of balls into the ground and you may have to adjust his swing. Or you just go out on a guy like Dakota Jordan and that's just freak, tons of power. And you're like, hopefully he can make contact. I'm fine with that. Like get me a couple of these guys with just stupid power and eventually one of them is going to develop and hit the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to hit law of averages says at some point you're going to hit on one of those guys, and they haven't hit on any of the guys where they've like been going, well, we're going to do hit tool and see if they can develop the power. Like it just hasn't worked for them. So
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean that's kind of what they did this year. They went that route with Dakota Jordan, Jacob Christian's another one of those guys, high power, has a little bit of swing and miss. Hipwell, the local kid out of Santa Clara, he's another guy that has some good power. He's going to be a little bit more consistent of a hitter. He can kind of go to all fields and hit for a little bit more contact. And then you also have Jenkins, the taller lefty with the kind of funky swing. Would I compare him to a little bit of Trevor Story and a little bit of Cody Bellinger? And if you watch it, if any of you guys look up Jenkins, the draft pick out of Maine, he literally is a mixture of both of them. He's very upright like Bellinger, but then he almost does like, he does that very long stride where he kind of hovers his foot as he swings.
what's his first name?
Like Trevor Story.
What's Jenkins' first name off the top of your head?
Let me grab that.
I was gonna see if I could pull it up on Twitter so I could show everybody his swing what you're talking about.
Yeah, let me
I'll circle back to that. So but yeah, I think long story, I think we're confident they'll get Jordan. I think they're gonna end up signing everyone in this class. Frederick, if Kyle Harrison say 95, 96, he'll be good. The velo drop has been disappointing. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because if you look at his average fastball velocity, it's only down a tiny bit. It's actually pretty minuscule. He's just cruising at 93. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's something that's intentional to try and last deeper into games, save his arm for the season. I'd really like to see it get at least up to about 95-ish, like this range. I'd like to see him mix some different grips. You've brought up a two seam, really good. I'd like them to change this, just trash that slurve, go with a better slider. I like his changeup. I like the cutter. I like the other stuff he's doing. I just think he needs a tick more velocity and a better secondary pitch and a little bit different movements. Because the command is always going to be kind of is what it is. I don't see with his delivery. I don't see that ever being super, reliable.
Yeah. Going on the draft pick, it was Jeremiah Jenkins. He's the lefty hitter out of Maine. Same college as Quinn McDaniel, one of the Giants prospects, currently middle infielder for Eugene. So he was the one I was referring to. It's a funky swing for sure, but he actually had a little bit less swing and miss than guys like Jacob Christian, the 5th rounder, and Dakota Jordan, the 4th rounder.
Here we go. I found one where they kind of let me see if I can share this. You guys can see what he's talking about here. It's just a very I think Cody Bellinger meets Trevor Story is a pretty accurate comparison there.
Especially if you look at his 2023 stance, he's a little bit more upright and tall. It's definitely interesting, but surprisingly, like I said, the swing and miss wasn't nearly as bad as some of these other guys that they drafted with a little bit bigger power numbers. He also, as you can see, he goes to both fields and he does walk a good amount as well. So,
yeah, for sure. Phlox, we did talk a little bit about this earlier. You'll have to kind of back it up a little bit. But yeah, I think we both are willing to move Doval, especially if you can get like a top 100 guy back. I mean, especially seeing what Puck just returned. Even I think Doval easily clears that by a lot, and you get a top 100 prospect for him. So, absolutely,
yeah.
What do we think? Good. We also talked a bit about Snell earlier. I think that's one they should be looking to move. I'm a little more return dependent. I know Ricky's a little bit more just move him, and I'd be fine. Yeah, that's the nail on the head. Trade everyone. But here we'll talk about some good before we wrap it up. We'll talk about a little bit of good stuff. Let's close that out. We don't need that up anymore. A little bit of good stuff. I think the biggest storyline for the last week you had, and I just did a video on him yesterday. I think Tyler Fitzgerald. He made Giants history, first rookie to hit a home run in 5 straight days or games. He's kind of developing a little bit of a reputation as a Dodger killer, and I love that. People forget he had a couple. He had a home run against the Dodgers last season, a couple big hits. One of the games at the end of last season kind of won it for them. This season hits a home run early in the year against the Dodgers. Or actually I think both his home runs last season came against the Dodgers actually. And then, he has a couple earlier in this series, then a couple good games. Every game was really a good game for him. So, it's really good to see. I love his versatility. I am perfectly content if they just want to throw him at shortstop every day. That is his natural position. He's looked comfortable there. That said, the Giants do have a lot of middle infielders in the upper levels that could get a look, so I like the fact that you can move him around and still find a way to get him in the lineup every day. But I think it's very clear he needs to play every day, wherever that is.
Yeah.
So
just play the hot hand and see how long it lasts is pretty much where they're at. Now I just hope he's not like one of these previous guys that comes up and is just kind of a flash in the pan. Like I remember some guys in the past. Yeah, Jarrett Parker or like I remember Brett Pill was another guy. He just had like a monster couple series against the Dodgers. Showed off a little bit of power and then just disappeared off the face of the earth. There's a couple other guys too. I remember Lewis Brinson had a big series against the Dodgers. I think just like, was it last year or the year before? I think it was 2 years ago. He had a huge series against the Dodgers.
5 in 3 games. He had 5 homers in 3 games against the A's.
Yeah. It was just nuts. A couple of them were like, game wasn't even close and they meant really nothing. Yeah. But yeah.
I remember Parker hitting a home run into those, in the O.Co Coliseum, whatever they call it nowadays. Those seats that are like way above like the batter's eye, and they have like that row of like there's only like 4 or 5 seats, it seems like, or 4 or 5 rows, and it like wraps around up there. I remember him hitting a ball up into that, and I was like, "What the hell?" It was like one of the deepest bombs I'd seen in that park. I'm pulling up Tyler Fitzgerald's right now. I'm pulling up his fan graphs. I have to do it on my phone because it'll like freak for whatever reason. Fangraphs like freezes this thing up. But there were some things I saw with him that give me hope that now some of it's unsustainable. He has like a 420 average on balls in play. Like he's not going to do that. Similar to how we talked about Wade and how we talked about Ramos. Like these guys aren't going to hit 400 plus on balls in play all season.
Have like 450 on base percentage. It's like, okay, guys, that's going to come way down to earth.
Yeah. But the things that I did, that are encouraging to me, he has a 10.5% walk rate and a 28.6% strikeout rate. If you kind of look at what he did in AAA this season, 10.3, 27.6, pretty close to in line. The walk rate is up. AAA, it was in 2023, it was 9.7%. Strikeout rate was only 23.8 last season in AAA. So, I mean, the strikeout rate's a little bit higher, but to me, it's encouraging that those are at least relatively close to in line with what he was doing. Now, is he going to be suddenly, if you go off WRC plus, he's 83% above average? No, he's not going to be that guy. Like realistically, he was closer to league average. He was like a 103 in Sacramento last season. So yeah, he's probably going to be a guy that's maybe he's 10 to 20% better than league average. Like maybe. And I'd be thrilled with that because he's going to hit some bombs. He can leg out extra bases. The legs are clearly a weapon with him on a team that just lacks it. So I do think he's playing his way into their long-term plans of some capacity. He's going to be 27 next season. So he is on the older side, but he does still have 6 years of club control. So he's not a free agent until 2030. You can play him for 3, 4, or 5 years in his prime before you move on. But I think he's clearly played his way into their immediate plans, we'll say.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that you could really just give him an extended look this year and keep him in a super utility type role. And, if Giants fans like Matt Duffy have a guy like this who can do way more, this guy can play all over the outfield. Yeah, it's not his natural position, but he's a really good athlete and he can play all over the infield for you as well, adds the speed late in games. And then you can also have him spot guys in the outfield and the infield and still get him, 3 to 4 starts a week if you really wanted to, if the bat is hot. But like Frederick's saying, he's probably leaning towards more of a slightly below average hitter, over the long haul. And that's totally fine. That's totally fine. This is a guy you're going to play in the third game of a series and spot somebody. Probably not going to stick at shortstop long term, but I mean, hey, this is the time to give him an extended run because as solid as Wisely's been, it's still best to probably put him at second and keep him there if you can. But who else is in here? Yeah. Ryan mentioned the Randy trade to the Mariners. Ryan, we did bring that up a little bit earlier. Yeah. We talked about the haul that the Mariners gave up for that being their number 12 and 22 prospects. Their farm is pretty similar to around what the Giants is. So we were kind of discussing how you could probably get something like that in return for Chapman if you were to trade him, given his contract situation, his defensive value, and then kind of the same level of power that Randy has.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, long show, Ryan. So
yeah, all good, man.
Yeah, you'll do it's in there though. It's right after Josh. If you scan, it's right after Josh got off. We got the news that they made that trade. We also talked a little bit about the Puck trade as well. So yeah, Grant, you missed a lot of talk. Giants, where they're going, or where their team's headed, kind of. Some trade talk. We did go down a rabbit hole on Patrick Bailey. Sorry. Didn't mean to offend anyone. It's a sensitive topic. It is what it is. But yeah, lots in there. And then we've just been kind of talking about, yeah, you can't, hey, Frederick, you can't take us personally, man.
No.
It's all love.
Just baseball talk, man.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil it. Grand, you've listened to me. It's, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's the one you now crap. I hate it. But
it started out with whether him or Price are basically deciding on calling pitches. We know Bailey's the one that throws down the finger. Well, in this case, PitchCom, but he's basically the one calling the shots to the pitchers. But we're discussing whether or not it's Price's influence before games. Yes, the pass balls as well, and his technique.
They got brought up
as far as the one leg. Variety of topics. We weren't trying to go in on Bailey. If you guys rewatch it, it had nothing to do with that. We just got kind of caught off guard a little bit and went down a rabbit hole. We were kind of going back and forth with Frederick on different things, but overall, we like the player. He's very solid. He's definitely a building block. No hate there. It's just there are certain things he could definitely improve on and become a better player.
Exactly. But yeah, the best better in baseball. the next good I wanted to bring up two more. I got two more guys. Hayden Birdsong, first one. I'm trying to not get angry at the organization. I am going to be patient and see what they do before I trash them for sending him down. And yes, I understand he's going to pitch in the doubleheader on Saturday. And I think he has 10 more days. Like, he can't come back for 10 days. So he's only going to miss one start if they do it right, and do right by him and bring him back up after those 10 days. But there's always a chance with Farhan in this organization that he's going to just sit down in AAA again. And frankly, he has thrown the ball well enough to deserve to be up. So Like I said, I'm going to wait to go off on them until they do something to force me to do that. But he deserves some love. The outing he had in Coors was really impressive. He gave up 1 home run. It was a 98-mile-per-hour exit velocity. I mean, it wasn't, it is what it is. It was a home run at the end of the day. He kind of hung one. The guy hit it, but most parks, it's not a home run. So it is what it is. But 12 strikeouts in Coors. He didn't use as some people have mentioned, I think Frederick maybe, fastball usage was way down in that outing. And that's part of what I like about Hayden Birdsong. He's got 3 really good off-speed pitches, and he'll throw them in any count. And yeah, is his fastball's movement perfect? No, but he still throws it 96 to 99. So
yeah. And that's the same thing we've kind of discussed with. Oh yeah, there we go. His non-fastballs are all very good, absolutely. And that's the thing is, we've discussed this with Wizenhunt. Me personally, I think Birdsong's fastball is better than Wizenhunt's. Wizenhunt's is a lot more straight, where Birdsong does bring in a little bit more movement, and then Birdsong does pair that up with not only a high-level changeup that we didn't really see coming, and yes, Wizenhunt does have that, but Birdsong also has a lot better of a put away pitch in his curveball. He gets, I mean, if you go back and watch that Rocky start where he had the 12 Ks, probably 7 to 8 of those strikeouts are off of his curveball. And he did a lot of that throughout the minors as well. So, absolutely. And that changeup's only going to get better. So he has a lot of different ways he can get you out. And I definitely think that he can improve on that fastball. But the velo's good. The velo's there. He's definitely somebody Cody and I have said is watch out. This guy can absolutely be better than Harrison, and that's no knock on Harrison. It's just he's a little bit more big league ready right now.
Better stuff.
And you don't see that typically out of a 22-year-old to be that developed with that many different pitches, because him and Harrison are pretty close in age, and honestly, Harrison really comes at you with a fastball, and all of his other pitches are a little bit more subpar right now for the big league level.
Yeah. And I've defended Harrison for that because of the fact that it's like, I get he's not as good as a lot of people hope, but I look at him and I go, he's having success with literally 1 pitch and crappy command. There's still such an enormous ceiling for Harrison because of the fact that it's like, okay, if he figures out this other stuff, he can be really good. But yeah, I mean, the fastball, obviously Frederick, it's not a great fastball. It's just fast. He throws it really hard, and it's just the velocity is going to play because of the fact that he can throw those other 3 off-speed pitches in any count. So teams can't sit on the fastball, and because of that, he's going to throw 98 past people, plenty, even when it's not a perfect fastball. The curveball, I'd been waiting for it. I mentioned it each of his last couple starts where, he kind of didn't, his usage on his curveball wasn't up, and it was kind of weird because watching him, especially at Richmond, the curveball was like his featured pitch. It was basically fastball curveball all day long, and it got a lot of outs, and it was easily his best pitch. And then it's like he hit the Coors, and he goes, "All right, y'all have 4 outings of tape of me throwing a bunch of sliders and changeups. Watch this."
Yeah, exactly. And that might be something that, Price got in his head about too, because that was just very odd seeing that right off the bat. And I mean, we discussed it in previous shows, but he had really good control of it right off the bat. And we assumed that that was an issue for him with that pitch because he was so heavy on the curveballs. So good to see there for sure. And then, going back on Harrison, I mean, his fastball is one of the best in the game. So, I mean, he definitely has more than enough time to develop his secondary pitches. With Harrison, I always kind of like to compare him to Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, that's a Hall of Famer right there. I'm not comparing him to Kershaw in the sense of having the same career, but Kershaw came up as a 2-pitch guy. He was basically fastball, curveball.
Yeah.
And then Kershaw later on developed a cutter, and he developed a slider and really improved his game as he got into the big leagues and put a little bit more time in. So Harrison's definitely a guy that can do the same. I just think a hard slider, it would be a lot better for him than his loopy kind of slurve thing that he does.
It's so
More of
easy
the
to
time,
read for hitters.
it's just way easier to pick up. Yeah, it doesn't play off the fastball like a good changeup would. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where
His
I'm at with
changeup's
him.
kind of
But
nice, the one he's working on.
I
It's a
just
work
I
in
just think
progress.
he needs to improve his control a little bit. If he can improve the control on that, I think we'll see his command be way better going forward, where it's not so, good start, bad start, good start, bad start, going back and forth with the command.
Yeah, I'd agree with this. He
Yeah.
needs a slider that looks like a fastball longer. I think that's the best thing I could say. Like he can't this current slurve that he throws, as soon as it leaves his hand, you can see the kind of like the like the arc to it. It's just hitter. It doesn't fool a single hitter in baseball. Like no one gets bad swings, and he needs something that's going to look like a fastball, because his fastball is, even as it's lost some velocity this season, his fastball still plays really well, even at 93.
Yeah.
So like that, yeah, whether it's a gyro slider or what, like he just needs something that has less of that arc out of his hand. Is what I see. Because he doesn't. His only chase pitch, as you mentioned, still strikes early and counts, but doesn't earn many chases. Yeah, the only chase pitch he has is the high fastball. That's it. So kind of.
I mean, he could also keep he could throw his slurve more like a true slider and really take notes off of Mad Bum just because of that arm slot. Because Mad Bum had kind of a longer slider, but it was more kind of like a sweeper in a way, or like a Javi Lopez. They both kind of had that long sweeper looking slider, but it was still harder to pick up because they're not throwing it like Harrison, where it's just kind of in between. It has a little bit of that break like a curve, and you can kind of pick it up a little bit too early. Yeah, Chris Sale too, exactly. Yeah, good comp there for sure.
That was his comp when he got drafted.
Yeah.
Like that's, or not necessarily when he got drafted. That was his comp when he was first in the minors, like mid to high 90s fastball and a Sale type slider. So whatever they did to that slider, they ruined that pitch. It's like, what are we doing here, guys? But that's a different rabbit hole that we're gonna not go down this time.
Yeah, I'm confident in him bouncing back with his secondary stuff. I mean, he's having a very solid year for his age. Yeah. He could easily still be in the minors. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, he's 22. Like that, we all have to remember that sometimes. The last guy that I want to give a shout out to, and I'm giving him a shout out because after yesterday, watching Bleacher Report go crazy on this guy after he grounded into a double play, there are actually people out there that were calling Elliot Ramos. I saw someone call him shitty. All right, like I'm just gonna put it out there, like, because he's gone through a cold streak, and it is mind-boggling to me. It's the reaction some of the Giants fans had to him. And you know what? He racked up 6 hits in the last 3 games against the Dodgers. So wanted to get with I think 1 or 2 doubles mixed in there. He has been cold since the All-Star break, but he's up to, I think, 8 for 30 now. So his falling apart is now he's hitting like 267 since the All-Star break with a couple doubles. Yeah, none have left the yard, is what it is. But I wanted to give him some love because after I saw that nonsense, I was like, nah, dude, I can't. Like, he's the first guy, and this is what I think I said to you, Ricky. He's the first guy since Posey and Belt. Those guys were in the lineup back in 2021. He's the first guy the Giants have employed in their lineup that actually looks like he belongs hitting either third or fourth since those guys. Like, you're not throwing JD Davis out there. You're not throwing Conforto. You're not throwing Jock Peterson. You're not throwing, Soler. You're not throwing any of this crap in there, or Chapman right now. You're not throwing these guys in there. Like, he's the first guy to actually look like he belongs hitting there in a while. So, like, let's not tear the kid down because he had a bad week. Like, come on. So that's my tangent. I'll let it rest now.
these last few years, the thing I just cannot wrap my head around is the loyalty to role players in their 30s, and then the lack of, really backing and supporting these younger guys that are, showing improvement. It's like we need to get behind these guys because these guys are the future of this team and ultimately who we need to rely on if this team wants to have a good future. I mean, the dude's 24 years old, just put up an all-star year after being stuck in the minor leagues for ever, putting up well over 1,000 at-bats down there. Um, he's somebody we need to get behind, and keep in mind there's nuance to these things. Ramos is a guy with zero protection in the lineup. He is the guy in this lineup. He has nobody around him. When Slater was still on this team, he was Slater's protection. He was the only reason Slater was even doing anything out of the leadoff spot because he had Ramos behind him, so he was getting better pitches to hit. That's how this works. Ramos has one of the worst middle of the orders in the lineup behind him, and he is still doing damage. And even if you look at his past 30 days, he still has, I believe, a 740 OPS around that range, and he has 5 bombs. So this guy's not falling off. He had maybe a slow week after the All-Star break, but I mean, there's nothing concerning there. The at-bat quality has been fine. There's really no reason to rag on this guy out of all people. He's literally the only reason why this team is not just completely eliminated.
This team would be 15 games under 500 if it wasn't for Ramos. Easily. Easily. I don't care what his WAR says. Like, I don't care if he's worth 3 WAR or 2.5 WAR. Like, to me, it's not even that simple because that doesn't even register, like you said, the better pitches and stuff the rest of the lineup gets because of his presence. Like, he's been really good, and this team would suck without him. I mean, they kind of suck with him, but they'd really suck if he wasn't on this team right now. So,
yeah, and then Frederick's mentioning Bailey's improvement from the offensive side. I mean, it's been massive, honestly, because, we're critical of some of the issues on defense. And we're like we said, we're nitpicking here because we do think the guy can be a really good player, but I mean, his average has gone way up. He's still shown a little bit of power. He kind of had a little bit of a hot streak there, I believe, on the New York Pittsburgh road trip a little while back. But overall, I mean, he's been a pretty consistent player for the most part. He doesn't get a ton of opportunities to drive guys in. We've kind of looked into those numbers recently. But, I mean, overall, he's shown a ton of improvement. Now, if he could just add a little bit more power, I'm being greedy here, but that would be awesome given his defensive value. So,
yeah. And he clearly has it. Like, the ball he hit in St. Louis, the ball he hit in Chicago, a couple of the home runs he's hit in San Francisco. I mean, he had the walk-off earlier in the year that I don't think it went in the cove, but he hit it pretty far over into right center. But it's clear there the ball he hit in New York, the grand slam. I mean, like, he hit some balls just a freaking mile, and it just it doesn't play consistently. I think that's the best way of putting it. It's just it doesn't play consistently. And we're getting greedy, we're getting nitpicky here, but yeah, we'd love to see if he can turn into a 15 to 20 homer guy to go with his defense. I mean, you're talking about like the best catcher in baseball if you're getting that production out of him, or one of like the top 2 or 3 at that point. So, I mean, it's been good. I do believe he deserves credit for the bat. I mean, now he has 0 power from the right side, like 0.
Yeah.
And that's the concern. But
I was just going to say that against righties, he's a well above average hitter, especially from the catcher position. Against lefties, hitting from the right side, which is always going to be his weak side. I will say, even in a small sample size, he's at least held his own. He hasn't been totally exploited. Like you said, it's just less power. But I mean, if we go back to a guy like Pablo, he was the same exact way. Yeah. He mashed against righties as a left-handed hitter, and showed a lot more power. And then from the right side, it was like he was kind of just a singles hitter at best, but he still held his own to the point where you're going to take it, because it's like, how often is he really going to be facing lefties? It's not super often. And, being a catcher, they're going to be mixing days off here and there anyways. And even though Casale is not a great hitter from the right side, he's going to be taking on some of those lefty matchups to give him a breather. So definitely much improved.
Yeah, I wish they timed up his days off a little better sometimes. Giving him yesterday off against a righty, with Glass now going, who, by the way, he hit a home run off earlier in the season. And then he plays today against Kershaw. It was like, guys, like, we know he hits righties better. He doesn't need a day off every other day. Like, he's not, we might make jokes about him being tired, but like, he doesn't need to get a day off every other game. Let him play against the righties. Put him on the day off, especially day game after a night game. It was perfect for him to be off today.
And the thing is, you don't need to plan his days off weeks in advance. Like, we can do this a few days ahead of time, so then we already know the for sure pitching matchups. For me, it's either do that or give him a set day off where, say, Casale is catching strictly Webb or something of that nature. So it's a little bit more consistent, because it's a little frustrating when he gets 4 days off or whatever it was for the All-Star break, and then that first game he's sitting out, and then only a few days later he's sitting out again. It's like, I think he's only 24, 25 years old still. I'm like, yeah, he's 25 years old. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I understand giving him a breather. You don't want to wear him down, but the guy has had plenty of rest. Like, these are crucial games. And, if we think Bailey's as good as, or if Bailey's as good as we think he is, then he needs to be in there.
A grand for this comment. This is just for you. I mentioned it earlier, but this is just for you, man.
Jabba the Hutt Jackson.
I don't know why it's showing it like this, but that was my tweet after Nick Ahmed went yard. So there you go, man. Oh God.
Let's be honest, guys. When we saw prior to yesterday's game, did anybody expect Ahmed to not do something big, like hit his second or third homer of the year against the Giants of all teams, and against a pitcher who rarely gives up homers? Like,
of course.
My Lord, this season in a
nothing
nutshell.
Offensively for the Giants. Of course he
does. One wall scraper homer at freaking Oracle.
Yeah, the one where I was like, he looked like he got every bit of it and it barely cleared. Oh God. Man. But all right. Unreal. Yeah. I think we should probably call. We're at like 2 hours and 20 minutes already. This is a long one. Thanks for sticking it out with us, guys. Thanks, Ricky, for joining. For anybody watching on Twitter, please do hop over to the YouTube side. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I think we're pushing closer to 600 subscribers right now, so that's pretty awesome. We have some hopes for off season when hopefully things can be a little more exciting again, because maybe we'll get some good movement. Maybe we'll get some good movement this week. I don't know. I think Dan is. Well, we may do one tomorrow. We might not. I know after doing this, you might not want to go for super late tomorrow, but we'll see if Caveman is feeling better tomorrow. He's been sick, so if he's feeling better and up to it, we'll probably try and get another one going tomorrow. It'll be a late one though, I'm sure. So, yeah. All right, man.
All right. Thank you guys for hopping in.
Yeah. Catch you guys all later. Have a good one.